The Middle East had fallen off the international community's radar. Now comes the steady stream of leaders who've donned their penitent's garb and flown in to show support and push for peace. The latest, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, traveling to both Israel and the West Bank as the war with Gaza stokes bitter rivalries in the European nation that's home to Europe's largest Jewish and Muslim populations. We'll ask about Paris's official policy going forward and the acrimony at home over the far left's refusal to brand Hamas a terror organization, and over the government's blanket ban on pro-Palestinian demonstrations, a ban that's since been overturned by the courts. How toxic is it? This time in France. The whole world feels a stake in the land that's 3 times holy, and the French are no exception. From the Crusaders and Napoleon to de Gaulle and Chirac, the Middle East plays a part in our own collective narrative. Is this a watershed moment for the Middle East? And if so, then which way is it headed? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Emmanuel Macron's Middle East mission. With us, Natalia Pouzyreff, member of the French Parliament from Emmanuel Macron's Renaissance Party. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
Thanks as well to political consultant Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, or Professor Moreau-Chevrolet.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Professor of Political Communications at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
And from London, Gilbert Achcar, Professor of Development Studies and International Relations at the University of London. So as your books include The Arabs and the Holocaust, the Arab-Israeli War of Narratives. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation you have on the hashtag F24debate. Yeah, Emmanuel Macron landing in Tel Aviv, and before he'd even left the airport, opening his trip in the company of families of the victims of the October 7th attacks. 30 French citizens killed on the day. 9 remain missing, possibly hostages.
Our daughter, 41 years old, was killed 2 days after her birthday. She went to celebrate her birthday.
My daughter and mother are both dead.
Yeah, an emotional moment there. And we heard the French president saying, we've had flare-ups before, Natalia Pouzyreff, in the Middle East. This time, what's different is these more than 200 hostages, a lot of which are foreign nationals. So there is a stake for all the countries on that side of the equation, in that Emmanuel Macron himself earlier saying that France is still working to help try and free its own citizens there.
Yes, indeed, it's the priority of this trip to the Middle East, and French President Macron has said it, and he first went to visit the parents of the victims and some families of hostages, and said it's his priority to get the hostages freed, and this is with no conditions. So this is the first thing that is required from Hamas, and I doubt there can be any ceasefire before that.
And the French newspaper Le Monde saying there's some 50 French nationals who are stuck in the Gaza Strip right now. We don't have the exact number on that.
Yeah, it's very difficult to comment about French citizens in Gaza because there are no journalists. There's no real communication except from some NGOs who are there. But of course, we'll do everything to evacuate I would say, foreign citizens, no matter if they are French or whatever, who will try to make them as well be able to leave Gaza as soon as possible.
It's a balancing act. And Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, your thoughts listening to the messaging from the French president on this trip?
So far, the messaging has been good. I mean, he acknowledged the particular gravity of what happened on October 7th, which is not... It's a terrorist attack of a particular kind for the Jewish people especially. It's like the Holocaust all over again. It's felt like this, and it's not to be taken unseriously. You need to take it seriously and endorse that. It was very clear on Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist group. It's not a representation of the Palestine. It's not a legal representation. It's a terrorist group. All of that is very clear. So for once, we have a very, very clear position. It's been kind of mixed up during the trip because he made one of two mistakes.
Let's talk about one of those. Macron making the rounds, meeting with the president of Israel, the prime minister, leaders of the opposition. In Benjamin Netanyahu's company, the French president talked tough on Hamas with an idea that drew everyone's attention.
France is ready for the international coalition against the Islamic State, in which we are engaged for our operations in Iraq and Syria to fight against Hamas. I propose to our international partners to build a regional and international coalition to fight terrorism that threatens all of us.
Now, the French presidential palace was quick to sort of clarify, because there was an immediate backlash, putting Hamas in the same bag as ISIS, tantamount to France ruling out a peaceful solution for Gaza and endorsing all-out war. The French presidential palace, in a briefing with reporters, stating the idea is to draw inspiration from the international coalition against Daesh and see what aspects can be replicated against Hamas. Will that clarification be heard?
We don't know. It's always bad to make a mistake in the middle of such crisis, obviously, because the tensions are at their peak. You can't even talk about this conflict in between friends. It's impossible to talk in between friends calmly about this conflict. So making this kind of a mistake will have consequences. In the meantime, what he wanted to say is especially clear, is that Hamas must be treated like any terrorist group in the region, and it's only a terrorist group. That part of the message is clear. What is
a terror group with which you have to negotiate?
Obviously, there will be some kind of a negotiation, but not directly with Hamas. And the official position is that you don't negotiate with a terrorist group, you fight against it. So what he said was good to that extent. The problem is this agglomeration, this conglomerate that he forms with every terrorist group in the region is bad, because obviously you don't want these groups to join forces. And what is really hard to fight against for the moment is that Hamas succeeded in one-to-one thing, in communicating one message. Is that maybe the Arab street, that doesn't exist, it's a pure fiction, but maybe the Arab street is behind Hamas. And all the efforts of Hamas are heading in that direction, agglomerating any Arab, making it that every Arab will endorse Hamas as a leader.
In the company of the Palestinian president, Gilbert Achcar, Emmanuel Macron calling what's happened since October 7th a tragedy for Israel and a catastrophe, those were his words, a catastrophe for the Palestinian, both humanitarian and both for the reasons Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet talked about, this sort of blurring in the eyes of global public opinion between Hamas and the Palestinian people, which Macron said is not the right is not correct. Hamas is not the Palestinian people. But your thoughts on his use of the same word catastrophe that Palestinians use to talk about their displacement back in 1948 from their lands in what is now Israel?
Well, I don't think the intention of Emmanuel Macron was to use it in the same way that the Palestinians or the Arabs in general use it. And you are referring here to the term Nakba, which means the Arabic term Nakba, which means catastrophe. I presume that the French president meant that October 7, that is the operation launched by Hamas, was a catastrophe for the Palestinians, and he meant by that a political catastrophe. But what the Palestinians mean when they speak of an unfolding catastrophe, a new Nakba, is this prospect of the invasion of Gaza by the Israeli troops, the forced displacement of the population of Gaza, with the attempt even of pushing them towards the Egyptian territory in order to take hold of the Strip and once emptied from its or from most of its original population, and annex it to the state of Israel. That's what the Palestinians call the second Nakba that is unfolding under our eyes. And if you allow me, but I think the statement by the French president was a huge political blunder. I mean, this is really based on complete incomprehension of what is going on in the Arab world and how the people, not only in the Arab world, I would say beyond the Arab world, not only in the Muslim world, I would say even in the global south, the whole perception of what is going on is very, very different from the perception of the Western governments. The Western governments. How? Yes, well, the Western governments are unconditionally supporting Israel in what is going on. And this comparison of Hamas with ISIS is ridiculous. I mean, ISIS was loathed by the overwhelming majority of the Arab people. They saw ISIS as something horrible, and it was rightly so. But they don't see Hamas at all in the same way, because they see Hamas as an organization, whatever they may think of its political program, its ideological profile, its methods, but they see it as something, an organization that has an important, very important popular support among the Palestinians, whether in Gaza or even in the West Bank, and that is in an occupied territory under international law. Gaza is regarded as occupied because it is a kind of open air prison, and therefore launching or fighting a legitimate fight, even though this or that method that they may use in this fight is not legitimate. The issue is to speak of Israel's right of self-defense is not actually something very meaningful in international law, because there is no right of self-defense of an occupier against the
But hang on, in this case, Gilbert Achcar, it was people on motorcycles with body cams crossing over and killing and kidnapping people.
Yes, absolutely. But
do you have a right of self-defense there?
This is exactly like the Ukrainians striking in Russian territory, deep in Russian territory. I believe that the Ukrainians have the right to do it. Of course, this is an occupation.
That has nothing to do with Ukraine. Come on. Ukraine is a democracy. Can you say that Hamas is a democracy? Hamas is a dictatorial thing. They kill children and old people. I had the less passionate question. I apologize for that. My family has been involved. I apologize for that passion that I displayed. I had one question for you. Could October 7th be a game changer in the opinion of the Arabs regarding Hamas? Could they change their opinion because of what they did?
Look, it might have done so had it stopped there. But the ongoing massacre in Gaza, at the time we're speaking, you have already 4,000, several hundred more of Palestinians killed, and much, much more of people injured, and a huge displacement of population. The scale of this massacre, and I'm afraid we are only at the beginning because the ground invasion hasn't yet been launched. The scale of the massacre is such that the public opinion in the Arab world has completely shifted. In support, I mean, for them, the priority is supporting the Gazan population, everybody included, against the Israeli onslaught. When the French president, says that he wants to participate in this war, this is a huge political blunder.
Well, he's rolled it back since. Natalia Pouzireff, though, we heard Joe Biden try to connect the dots between Hamas and Russia. He got a lot of criticism for that, saying one's a non-state actor, the other is a government. Macron trying to connect the dots between Hamas and ISIS. Is that also perhaps a stretch too far, and that we shouldn't try to always connect everything?
No,
Of
course,
course.
but there's a right to defend yourself and to protect your country, as Ukraine is doing from the Russians. I don't see why Israel should not protect itself. So the first thing is that to reckon there was a terrible massacre in such conditions of Israeli people. That's why we express, and the president expressed his solidarity with the Israeli people. It doesn't mean supporting Benjamin Netanyahu politics in the Western banks, for instance. So I hope the French citizen, our French citizen, can understand the difference between, grieving for together with the Israeli people and trying to minimize casualties in Gaza at the same time of people who are hostages from the Hamas and willing to fight against Hamas. I hope our people can understand that Hamas, being a terrorist group, it must be fight with the same determination as ISIS was. It doesn't mean using the same means. I would say we are not at war in Ukraine, for instance. So I'm doing, the parallel again. It's not about fighting in Gaza. It's not about that. It's about unity of democracies to clearly state Hamas is a terrorist group and as such has to be eliminated,
that brings
or
us...
at least the military assets of Hamas have to be destroyed. This doesn't mean that anyone is going to recover Gaza Strip. I don't see what will be the options then to how to run Gaza.
Yeah.
It's about
That's a longer-term
destroying military assets of Hamas in Gaza. That's what it is about. And protecting lives of Gaza people, providing more humanitarian aid. That's, I hope, what the people can, make the distinguish about
the distinction.
The
Natalia Pouzireff, you're asking out loud how it will play among French public opinion. That brings us to an important segment of this conversation, which is we have seen a war of words in this country. The latest episode sparked by the Speaker of Parliament's weekend visit to Israel, judged too one-sided for the firebrand far-left leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the same Mélenchon who refuses to brand Hamas a terror group. Charlie James has more.
France's president of the National Assembly makes a weekend visit to the Jewish state. Yael Braun-Pivet said she was there to express France's unconditional support to Israel.
Nothing should prevent Israel from defending itself.
The political message of Braun-Pivet's trip was questioned within her own Renaissance party, founded by President Emmanuel Macron, but it was forcefully denounced by the leader of the far-left France Unbowed party. Jean-Luc Mélenchon was at a Paris demonstration in support of Palestinians Sunday and wrote on social media,
"This is France, while Madame Braun-Pivet camps in Tel Aviv to encourage the massacre, not in the name of the French people."
Reaction was swift. The far left has already been accused of anti-Semitism for refusing to condemn Hamas's attacks in Israel or call it a terrorist organization. Braun-Pivet has been the target of numerous anti-Semitic threats over the years and accused Mélenchon of evoking concentration camps.
J'ai été très choquée.
I was very shocked.
Connaissant un peu Jean-Luc Mélenchon,
Knowing a little about Jean-Luc Mélenchon, I am certain the word camped was not chosen by chance. It's a new target that's been put on my back.
nouvelle cible qu'on me met dans le dos.
The French far left has traditionally been pro-Palestinian, but France Unbowed's refusal to clearly condemn Hamas has crossed a line for some. The controversy fracturing the left-wing NUPES coalition that includes France Unbowed, the Socialists, and several other parties.
Philippe Moreau-Chauvelet, is too much being made of that tweet?
It's not only a tweet, it's a political position, so you have to analyze it and try to understand it. And there is a line that has been crossed on October 7th. This line has changed the political landscape. Some admit that, others deny it. If you go on treating Hamas as it was before October 7th, then you can't have a dialogue with the other part of the population for whom October 7th was the continuation of the Holocaust, to say things as it is. There is no discussion possible. That's why getting rid of Hamas is so important. And what we don't understand is why Jean-Luc Mélenchon doesn't want to admit that Hamas is a terrorist group, given that there are 3 French casualties so far, civilians killed.
30.
Yeah, 30, and 30, sorry. And 30 casualties that were, people that were in favor of peace. They were dancing at a peace festival. They were not people that were against Palestinians. And they were not even in politics. They were just dancing for peace, for God's sake. So it's like, it's a non-communication. And we don't understand the position of La France Insoumise. We don't understand why Jean-Luc Mélenchon is endorsing that, other than maybe a calculation, a political calculation, that maybe he will gather enough votes on this side of the political spectrum, votes of people that would support Hamas in France. There are people, we are a democracy, there are people supporting Hamas in France.
Hamas or, as Gilbert Achcar was saying, who are looking at the suffering of people in Gaza, and what happened on October 7th has now come second when they see the death toll climbing and climbing.
But you have to, that's true. You have to acknowledge both sides, and both sides are suffering. That's immensely true. But you have to be aware, and you have to acknowledge the suffering of both for their value.
But
the problem with La France Insoumise is that they don't want to acknowledge that what happened on October 7th was special, not a common thing that happens in a war. It's the continuation of the Holocaust for many Jewish people. If you don't get that, obviously you're supporting Hamas in the eyes of the Jewish people.
I think definitely in France, people are free to support Palestinians, but not Hamas as a terrorist group. And I hope my fellow citizens can understand the difference, can make the difference. But when you hear Mélenchon and La France Insoumise, they don't make the difference. They don't acknowledge Hamas is a terrorist group. They are talking about war crimes in Israel. They can't say it has been a massacre. And so it's not helping to clarify the situation for our fellow citizens. I hope everyone can admit that Palestinians have been, it's the 3rd generation of refugees. They have no state. It has been an ongoing issues. We put it on the mat for years and years. Now it's blowing back at our face. So now it's maybe the good time to deal with it. Maybe it's an opportunity. Unfortunately, it's an opportunity. But first, they must acknowledge the crimes against humanity, the massacres of innocent Israeli lives, and not only Israeli lives. They were Thai people. They were people dancing like at the Bataclan. Bataclan, it was not war crimes. It were terrorist attack. So if we apply that to Bataclan, why shouldn't we say that and apply it to what happened to the rave party in Israel?
Gilbert Achcar, let's take if we could, a wider view on this. And that is because we saw in that report how the argument is playing out between the ruling party and the far left of Jean-Luc Mélenchon. But it's also tearing apart the left. The left in France is torn apart over this issue. There are even some within Jean-Luc Mélenchon's party who disagree with him. What's happened to France's left on this issue?
Well, you have had differences among the French left, in the broad sense of the left, on the issue of Israel for a very long time. Don't forget that most of the French left, aside from the communists, in the early years of the State of Israel were very much supportive of the State of Israel. And that was a State of Israel that was just coming out of the occupation of much more territory than what was allocated to it by the United Nations, and with the displacement of 80% of the Palestinians over that territory without letting them return to their houses, to their lands, and as we know,
so what changed in the French
areas
left?
And villages were erased. So the fact that part of the French left is not able to look at Jews other than as victims, even when people who are of Jewish descent are perpetrating war crimes, as has been the case with the state of Israel. This is very serious, I believe. You know what? I mean, this will remind everyone, at least in the global south, of Aimé Césaire's famous discourse on colonialism, where he said, you guys in Europe, what you blame Hitler for is not
Gaza is not a colony again.
The crime against the human. It is the crime against the white man. That's what is your problem. Because when it's not non-white people, they are not human in your view. This is how people see it. And you have to understand that this is very serious, because the way Western government
But there's resistance, and resistance is something that, Gilbert Achcar, resistance is something that we talk a lot about in France, particularly when it comes to World War II. But there's resistance and there's acts of terror. And in this case, what they're tearing himself apart over is whether or not to brand what happened an act of terror, and whether or not Gaza is a terror organization.
Definitely, there were acts of terror committed on October 7. What do we mean here by terror? You mean by terror, I'm sure, the fact of killing civilians. That's what you call terror.
Cutting heads of babies?
Okay. Yeah, well, whatever. The killing of civilians, however it is.
There's a way people were...
One at a time, Gilbert Achcar.
So how many babies in Gaza have been killed over the years? Many more times than whatever number of people were killed on October 7. You have to keep that in mind. And that's what the Arab people, the Muslim people, the global south, whoever, they see that. They see that you have had much more Palestinian victims.
Right, but my question's about
incomparably more.
My question's about
Hamas,
France.
Let me tell you
my question's about France.
One thing is to say that some actions on October 7 were terror actions. That's, I think, rather obvious if we take that definition of the term, which applies also to the actions of the Israeli state, because you also have state terrorism, not only non-governmental terrorism. State terrorism has killed in history much more people than non-governmental terrorism. But even if you look at that, I mean, is calling the Sinn Féin a terrorist anything helpful, despite the fact that the IRA did some operations that were killing civilians? How many of the movements in the colonial world have killed? The Algerian Front de Libération Nationale, they killed civilians, didn't they? So labeling them terrorists, where would that lead you?
All right, Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, let me ask you on this, because we're running short on time. Just this issue of how it's tearing apart the French left. Why now? Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet.
Because it's torn apart exactly between the speech we just heard, which is very homogeneous. The speech that we hear is that the South would be revolting against the former colonialist countries, and there would be a liberation front, global united. And there is a left which is concentrated more on the domestic issues and more on the real issues, which are not a global fight between the South and the North, which doesn't exist, because neither the North or the South are united on anything. And this is the fight in Israel is not a global fight that would be played locally as we hear now. And this left is weakened because they don't know how to fight against the populists like
Let's talk about that.
That are the advocates of that speech that we just heard.
While the left tears itself apart, guess who's climbing in the polls? The far-right's Marine Le Pen.
Obviously.
During a parliamentary debate on Tuesday, bashed the concept of a Gaza ceasefire, saying, quote, "You only ask terrorists to lay down their weapons and liberate hostages." My question is, what does this say, Philippe, overall about France itself?
We have three populist blocs. It's not my interpretation. The author of that analysis is Charles de Velaine, is at the University of Ghent. we have three populist blocs. We have a populist bloc on the left, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, very much based on, pro-Russian, anti-vax, against vaccine movements, and much recently pro-Hamas stance. We have a far-right bloc headed by Marine Le Pen, which is the closest to be the next power to be. She should be elected president in 2027. All odds are pointing in that direction, unfortunately. That's the state of the art. And the third bloc is a center-right bloc, a techno bloc, headed by Emmanuel Macron. But we don't know if he will have a successor able to fight against Marine Le Pen. So what we see is that three blocs are fighting against each other, and Mélenchon is heading head against these two blocs, and he makes no distinction. We are not in a. What I want to say is that we are in a free fight. Politically speaking, we are not in the noble art anymore. It's a free fight time. Okay, we give blows that are even beyond what we should be given. We are not reasonable enough. We are not reasonable anymore.
We have to be reasonable, because the central bloc, as you mentioned it, has to be reasonable. The situation is so serious, it's so dramatic in a way that we have to do everything in order to avoid division amongst the French people, amongst the world community as well, avoid this bloc, the West versus the rest. This is very important. This is our responsibility. This is the responsibility I feel as a politician, not to divide the people. And this is what I'm calling, my fellow citizens to not listen to either the far left or the far right, because they are only willing to divide. They are populists, and we should value the fact that we have a democracy, but a democracy can be fragile. So we have to take care of our democracy. Until now, everyone is able to say anything more or less what he wants in France. This is the value of democracy. Everyone can pray his God. But no, then we should not mix religion and politics as well when there are demonstrations like on Place de la République.
Well, how do you feel?
So that's very
Sunday's
important
demonstration went off peacefully. It happened because the courts overruled the government. The interior minister had issued this had asked for a blanket ban on pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Exactly. You personally, do you think the courts were right?
Yes, as long as we see that we can manage the situation, the demonstration will go on quietly. I think in France we have been doing so far better than in other countries. In Germany or in England, I've heard the demonstration were more dramatic. So I'm happy that it went not too bad. What I don't like, this is my personal feeling, is that religion comes into it. It's Muslims against Jews, or people supporting Muslims against people supporting Jews. No. It's not like that. I was raised, we were people from different origins. 20% of the French people have different origins. We were talking about people from Morocco, from Algeria. We weren't talking about Muslims at that time. And we have to respect all religions. But what if it becomes a war of religion in France? I think it's not possible. It's a laic country, and it's a democracy.
Secular country.
And this is more valuable than anything. Quickly,
because we're out of time. Gilles Berachkar, just to go around the room. The reaction to the French courts overruling the government there.
No, I want to comment on what has been said. And you did very well bringing in this issue of Marine Le Pen. The portrayal of what's going on as Democrats against terrorists. Is Marine Le Pen a Democrat? I beg to differ. I don't consider the far right and the fascists as Democrats, okay? Mm-hmm. In the same way, I don't see it as Democrats. Let me read you. I have Haaretz in front of me, and this is Israeli Holocaust historian Daniel Blattman saying he is astounded at how quickly Israel is hurtling toward fascism. And he says Israel's government has neo-Nazi ministers. So come on, this issue of Democrats being, represented by the present Israeli government, this is absolutely bizarre conception of democracy.
But
Do you know why?
Can
Do you know
change.
why? Do you know why this guy
In
from
Israel.
Haaretz is able to do that? Do you know why it's not possible to do that in Gaza?
What that?
Because it's a
What is it?
democracy.
It's a
It's a
democracy.
democracy, Gilbert, and you are living in a democracy. I congratulate you for
because
that.
the Palestinians have been under
We're
such a situation.
We're out of time.
That-
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Gilbert Ashkar, I want to thank you so
Let's
much
talk again.
for joining us from
Yeah.
London and
About democracy.
how this is playing out both here in France and, of course, in the Middle East and around the world. We'll be talking about it more with Philippe Moreau-Chambolet, Natalia Pouziraf. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
Thank you.